Hello, everybody. Jason here from the Coalface podcast. I've created a new sub-series called Mentoring Moments, and Mentoring Moments is composed of clips taken from my one-on-one and group mentorship sessions where we discuss e-commerce, digital, retail, and so much more. Hopefully you get a lot out of this. Enjoy. So I'm with Sean Mellis right now from Bot. Hello, Sean. It's great to be with you. And we're going through a bit of one-to-one mentorship. And you'd asked a question that I think is going to be pretty valuable to a pretty wide-ranging audience. And I just want to tackle that with you now. And you compared and contrasted some of the digital agencies that are out there, whether that be a dev agency or a creative agency, doesn't really matter, but let's just talk in the context of digital. Some of them go for the hyperscale route, or they try to go the hyperscale route, and ultimately they want to become like super agency. They want to become almost like a publicist. Ultimately, if they had their ultimate vision, that's where they'd like to get to be, and they will just continue to pull new agencies, or an Accenture group or something like that, where they continue to buy up smaller agencies to penetrate new regions. And then you've got the more boutique agencies, which stay relatively small. It's intentional that they stay small. They have no desire for world domination. They want to go deep, not wide. And there are two schools of thought. And then, of course, you got the middle guys. You got the guys that do want to achieve a certain scale in a certain region. Maybe they'll get up to, say, let's say up to 100 team members in a region, and they're happy with that. So you've got boutique, which is maybe 1 to 5 people. You've got the middle size, which is maybe 5 to 100 people in a given region, and maybe they don't ever grow outside that. And then you've got, 100 to 10,000 people, which is those larger agencies, and then getting into the mega agency territory. And you'd asked with me, obviously, I've chosen to stay very small as a boutique consultancy. And the main reason that I've chosen to stay boutique for me, and what works for me, is that it gives me the flexibility to not have mouths to feed. That's probably the single biggest benefit, is that I can pick and choose clients that I believe are genuinely the best fit for me, and I'm genuinely the best fit for them. The moment you've got even one other mouth to feed, and I know because I've run agencies before, if you've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 staff that are relying on you for their mortgage payments, it starts to become much more difficult to say no to work that is not necessarily the best fit. It could be an okay fit, but you will take that work because you need to keep the mouths fed. And it becomes a little bit of a dog chasing its tail scenario. You take on new work, you have to take on more people to swallow the work, which means you then have to take on more work to keep those people fed. Then you take on more people to feed. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. It's very difficult to have a static growth agency that is of any significant scale. So once you get up to, say, 30 staff or more, you're either growing or you're shrinking. It's very difficult to match demand perfectly. It's very difficult to do. And so that's why you'll find that over time, most agencies that get to that sort of 30-person space, they will either rapidly grow to, say, around 100 people or more, or they will shrink back pretty quickly from 30 down to maybe 10 to 15 staff, because then at that point you can stay boutique. You can have a number of long-term clients that are on retainer with you. You can keep the mouths fed. You can have mostly account managed clients. You can do less professional services, more managed services. Whereas when you get to hyperscale, you need to have fully developed professional services and managed services divisions in the business, and you need to have separate teams servicing them. Whereas in a smaller agency, you have teams that overlap professional and managed services. So they're doing a little bit of project work, they're doing a little bit of retainer and managed services work, and it keeps everybody fed, it keeps everybody happy, and you can be relatively static. So those are the kind of key things for me that were a decision maker for me. And finding people that can do the type of consulting that I want to provide as a business is very difficult. There's very few people in our industry that do what I do and have the blend of experiences that I have. And now that doesn't make me better than anyone. It just makes me a little bit unique. But because I've wanted to stay small, that means I will never do implementations. So I'm not going to go out and build websites. I'm not going to go out and do the tech implementations. I'm not going to go out and implement a CDP for people or a PIM. I'm going to work with partners, both tech providers as well as implementation partners that implement on that technology. I'll work with them, and I have really great working relationships with a number of very good technologies and a number of very good delivery partners that I can recommend to my clients. And then we can go through a search and select process for the right technology and the right partner for them that they feel that they can work well with and fits their budget, et cetera. And so those are some of the differentiating factors. I think it's really about, do you have the stomach once you start scaling, it's very difficult to stop scaling. I think of it like pushing the rock over a huge boulder over the crest of a hill. Once you start it rolling down the hill, it is a very difficult thing to stop. It's a juggernaut. And so getting your life back in that environment is very difficult. And that's why I tell people the agency environment is one of the absolute best places in the world to learn very quickly. You will be in a pressure cooker environment. You'll be having to deal with customers. You'll be dealing with deadlines. And that's one of the things when people come directly out of university, for example, let's say they're a designer or a developer, whatever, I say, look, instead of going in business for yourself straight out of university or going to work freelance or something like that, go and work in an agency. Go and do it for 2, 3, 5 years. Most people can't stomach agency life for longer than about 5 years because it's high pressure, long hours, not a lot of sleep, at least historically when we were meeting in person, big drinking culture. Yeah. It's the nature of the agency beast, right? You're pressing flesh. You're trying to impress clients. You're trying to get them on board and keep them happy. So it's a pressure cooker of an environment, but you will learn at a massively accelerated pace because you're exposed to so many different businesses, business models, go-to-markets, etc. And that's a great place to learn, but it's a difficult place to live.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's super insightful. I did make a comment, my question regarding the boutique model and having to push clients back or raise your prices. How do you deal with deciding when to raise prices and if you should, and scheduling people, say 2, 3, 4 months out, but they need something to delivered in the next couple of weeks? How do you manage that demand when you've only got so much capacity each month?
Yeah, look, that is pricing and pricing models. There's been hundreds of books written around pricing and pricing models. The general rule of thumb is if about 10% of your prospects are not complaining about your prices, they're probably too low. So you base it on the feedback you're getting from the market. So if you're getting 0 complaints about your pricing, or if you're getting 0 pushback about your pricing, then you probably got room to elevate your pricing. You've probably created the category, or you've created enough of a niche, or you've created enough of a personal brand or a corporate brand to where you now have earned the right to demand a higher price for your services. And so I think it also comes down to your business model. So most agencies, even if they're boutique, they'll have multiple sources of revenue. It won't just be their professional services. It will be some managed services. It will be some tech partnership revenue. So if they deal with SaaS platforms, for example, there's usually in those partnership models, there's usually some kind of minimum revenue share involved in that. It's usually not massive. It can range anywhere from 5% to maybe 20%, but it's not enough to pay your bills. It's not enough to make you rich, but it's just another string to your bow in terms of another income stream. And then you can perhaps have partnerships. If you're just very boutique and you don't directly offer all the services that you provide, then obviously you would refer those to other service providers or delivery partners that then hopefully you'd be getting some sort of kickback or commission from off of that as well. Because remember, if they've got a secure business themselves in the marketplace, whether that be through their own in-house biz dev or sales reps or whatever, they're going to be paying anywhere from 5 to 25% customer acquisition costs for that anyway. So if they're giving you 5, 10, 15% as a referral fee, that's still cheaper than what it would cost them to acquire customers in-house. And so most boutiques will have 2 or 3, they have to, by definition, they have to have 2 or 3 revenue strings to their bow. So that way they can keep usually one set of their pricing, maybe it's their professional services pricing, they can keep that really hyper competitive, but they're also filling in the revenue gaps with all these little rats and mice pieces of revenue that help to boost up the total top line revenue. And so there's a few different ways to go about it, but I think if you're not getting pushback on your pricing, you're probably too cheap. If you're not losing the odd deal, you're probably too cheap. If you are truly unique in the marketplace, meaning that you're really in a blue ocean environment, then you have more pricing power. If you're a red ocean environment, you got heaps of competition, then you have virtually no pricing power. And so there's lots of different factors that come into play here. Being able to say no to customers who are not a good fit starts with your ICP. More than anything else, it starts with your ICP. Once you've defined your ICP, then that defines your pricing. And then pricing over and above that ICP target is really about moderating demand. And you still have the opportunity to say no. You just flat out have the opportunity to say no. If you've got too much work on, you can say, look, I'd love to work with you. You seem like you'd be a great fit, but my books are full right now. And look, I'd love to work with you in 6 months. I think I'll have some opportunity to work with you at that time. I'll reach back out at that time. And if you're still wanting to work with us, then I'd love to take you on. But it really starts with the ICP. So what does your ideal customer profile look like? Once you define that, so mine is pretty clearly defined for my business. They need to be doing, there's about 4 or 5 bullet points that define my ICP. So they need to be doing $3 million a year in rev, and there's a few other things. And at the end of that filtration process is a pretty good idea of what their budgets will be based on what your ICP looks like and what they can realistically afford to pay for services like yours. And then you start thinking about ROI and TCO, and there's a few other little things at the margins that you can think about when you set your pricing. But for me, I just had to throw a dart at the wall when I was first starting out, and I've increased prices slightly over the last year. Not massively. I've increased them slightly just because I'm trying to moderate that supply and demand curve, and just trying to make sure that I can continue to give exceptional service to every client that I say yes to.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the space that I want to head is being able to deliver exceptional service where I know there are outcomes attached to every project we do because we've delivered the same process with the same industry, with the same ICP, and can guarantee those results to a degree. I did want to speak quickly, if you've got time, on guarantees. And if it's come up as part of your sales process. I've recently implemented one, which is a work-free guarantee. If I don't hit certain time reduction, like we've got resolution rate, first response time, and overall support workload as 3 of the metrics we use with chatbots and help desk implementations. And if we can reduce those numbers by at least 30% within 3 months, then we've hit the target ROI for the project. And if we don't hit those numbers, then the work-free guarantee comes in and they get an additional 3 months worth of optimization and reporting. I haven't quite tested that yet. This is the first time we're implementing it with a project we've just signed off on. But curious to know if you've done something similar, if they've worked for you in the past, and if you like the idea of a work-free guarantee.
Yeah, look, it can work very well. The dangerous territory you get into is if any of your KPIs are reliant on the customer to deliver on those KPIs. So I'll give you an example. So sometimes in the merchant world with e-commerce agencies, merchants will want, let's say they come in for a re-platform project and they've got a deadline to hit. They say, okay, we're going to write it into the contract that if you don't hit the deadline, every month over the deadline, we get an additional 10% discount, top line discount on the project, right? Up to a maximum of say 30% or something like that. The challenge in that environment, and I've seen this be dictated by customers, but usually when you turn around and you say, okay, we'll accept that. However, we have certain criteria too, because there are dependencies on you to be able to deliver this project on time, then what we'll do is we will add a clause, a mirroring clause that says we'll add 10% every month to the project budget if you don't deliver content, if you don't do, we have this list of 5 or 6 things we need from you by very specific milestones within the project. And if you don't hit those milestones for us, then we're going to start charging you extra. And usually the conversation about penalties goes out the window because they don't want to be put under pressure. They want to put all the pressure on the agency, but they don't want to put any pressure on themselves. And so usually when you have that discussion, you start saying, yeah, we're absolutely happy to entertain a penalty clause scenario, but it has to go both ways to make sure that it's equitable and to make sure that there's no incentive for you to drag your feet to push us along to get a discount. There has to be some sort of two-way incentive there for both parties to put their best foot forward. And the danger when you offer those guarantees like you are, obviously, if they understaff their teams, if they simply don't have enough people on a given shift, then those KPIs might not be able to be hit. Or if they don't do proper training, those KPIs might not be able to be hit. Or if there's any number of scenarios I can imagine where it would be difficult for you to hit your KPIs because of behavior by your customer. And so I think that that's the risk. I think having skin in the game in some way is awesome. I just think structuring it in a way that's fair and equitable for you and the customer is super difficult to do. It's really difficult. It's almost a lot of agencies for a while there were going down the model of trying to have skin in the game where they had equity in the business, or they say, look, we're not going to charge you anything up front, but any additional, and this was prevalent amongst marketing agencies primarily. They said, if we can help you grow your revenue, let's say they're an email marketing agency. Hey, if we can help you grow your revenue by 25% from email over 12 months, then this is, we're going to get a bonus, or this is how we're going to be paid out. The challenge with that is then it incentivizes the agency to do bad behavior. It basically says, okay, let's just send out a bunch of cheap coupons. Let's send out a bunch of 25% coupons with every email, and we'll easily be able to hit our target. So it sometimes these incentives have unintended consequences that actually negatively impact you and the customer, and you don't know what that looks like until you're actually in the middle of the engagement and you can't pull out. And so I always say, if you want to have skin in the game, be very cautious what that looks like, because it's a slippery slope and there can be massive unintended consequences as a result.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the guarantee we've gone with is relatively low risk for us and for them. Luckily, there aren't too many things we need from them in order to hit those targets. If they've got their inbound inquiries coming through in a regular volume, which I don't expect it to drop significantly or increase significantly throughout that time period, then we'll still be able to hit those targets. But it'll be a good test to see the length of time that's required to hit those targets and what other variables can get in the way of achieving those targets. But yeah, definitely risk on both sides.
I think you have to go into it with intent too. You have to decide, why are we doing this? Is it to win more deals? Is it to make more revenue? What is the intent of implementing this type of model? If it's not gonna increase revenue, if it's not gonna allow you to win more deals, if you've got confidence in your capability and in what you're delivering, then I don't think you necessarily have to say, look, give us a chance, give us a shot, we'll prove ourselves to you. But if a customer's on the fence, and you say, okay, we're going to selectively put these KPIs and criteria in place to help win a deal or push them over the line, then I think that can make sense. But making it a formal part of every engagement, in some respects, can actually devalue your expertise in some ways.
Yes, no, I agree. I got advice to put a guarantee in, but I took it out of our contract and had won a number of deals without it. But then there was this one client who came along, or prospect, who was on the fence and needed some reassurance. And I said, hey, how about this? We've got this guarantee. We can guarantee you X by X date. And if we don't hit it, then we'll give you an additional three months of work. And they liked that and said, yeah, let's do it. So I think it is just a mechanism to provide that reassurance for those who maybe didn't get the amount of exposure to your case studies, or you weren't able to present the outcomes you're achieving effectively, or did it just sink in properly. Then you can use this as that last pull to get them across the line.
Or if they're looking at multiple vendors and they're going,
True.
Okay, we're struggling to differentiate between 2, 3, 4 partners. Pricing's all similar. Skill set seems quite similar. What kind of safety net is one of these to differentiate themselves? What kind of safety net is one of these partners willing to put into place to win our business, basically? So if you're in a competitive bidding environment, particularly in an RFP type of environment, to win a deal, then sometimes they will make that a stipulation of the RFP. They'll say, hey, we're looking for, here's our Moscow list of priorities and all the things we want. Here's our relative budget. And here's some of the expectations we have around our engagement model, and also the milestone payment model. And they usually will dictate all sorts of things in an RFP so that they can try to compare on an apples to apples basis all the proposals that they get back. So sometimes you may not have a say in the matter. They may dictate what the safety net looks like for them to even consider saying yes to you. So I don't know, because you're working across projects that aren't necessarily like a full-blown web build system integration project, I don't know how many RFPs you receive. I don't know how common that is in your specific specialism, but in the e-commerce development world, it's exceptionally common.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I haven't come across too many unless it's government or a much larger organization. But yeah, it's good to know how to handle those if they come up. And I'm sure the larger organizations are quite used to putting those sort of conditions in place for agency providers or professional services.
Hey guys, I've got Jake Macon here from B Store, and we're doing a little bit of one-on-one mentorship today. And we've just had a pretty good conversation about a few different things that Jake's going through in his business. He's e-commerce manager, and so he's got a lot on his plate. I've been an e-commerce manager before in brands, and man, it's a lot to get through, isn't it, Jake? It's pretty full on at times.
It can be. all the time.
Yeah, and especially if you're in a relatively small business and you don't have a huge team. If it's a small to medium sized enterprise, and maybe you've got, say, a marketing manager, maybe you've got one or two marketing juniors working alongside you as an e-com manager, and then maybe some logistics and warehouse people, and that might be all that you've got in the business apart from like senior management, then you're it, right? You're the all-in-one person of the business.
That's it. Jack of all trades, master of none at this point, but it's good fun. You can have influence on the entire business and not just your certain channel, but it's been exposed to a lot of things. So that's good.
And we were also talking about sometimes upper management, and I've seen this in lots of businesses, will come in with some perhaps unrealistic sales expectations, or let's just say any KPI. They might come in with an unrealistic KPI of some variety that they just hand down from on high. We don't necessarily even know how they've arrived at that KPI. We don't necessarily know how they've arrived at that goal. We haven't been privy. We haven't been sitting in the board meetings. We haven't been sitting in the senior management meetings. But then we get given this seemingly unrealistic KPI that we have to hit as either as an e-commerce manager or as a marketing manager or as a digital marketer or whatever role we're playing. And we were talking about what we should do in those scenarios when we haven't been asked to contribute to the formulation of that KPI. When we haven't been asked for data, for example, let's say it's a sales KPI or almost any KPI. In the modern world of digital, we can go away and we can do research online about demand. We can do research on average conversion rates across a specific category or in a specific region. We can go online and we can do research on almost any single KPI that a management team would choose to hand down to us. But often they don't ask us. They don't come to us and say, what do you think is realistic? Because they don't actually want us to hit realistic targets. They want us to hit stretch targets, right? They want us to blow targets out of the water is what they want us to do. So they oftentimes have the automatic assumption, hey, if I set the KPI high enough and they stretch, well, even if they don't quite hit that, then we're gonna get close. And hey, that'll be better than working from a pure data standpoint backwards, where they have the assumption if we work from the data backwards, we're gonna set an ultra low KPI for ourselves, and that's not what we want to hit. We want to stretch as a business. So we did talk about that, and then we talked about I guess some ways in which we can approach this when given an unrealistic KPI, and we can turn that from a real challenge and a severe pain point, a pure stress point, into an opportunity. It allows us then to take that challenge and say, hey, I'm going to learn something anyway by trying to hit that challenge, even if I think it's totally unrealistic and the data tells me it's totally unrealistic. I'm gonna win just by attempting it. I'm going to learn something just by attempting it. But secondarily, I'm going to be able to use this as an opportunity to open a dialogue back with management and say, these are the reasons why I don't believe this is a realistic KPI based on the data, but I'm going to do everything in my power to help us hit this KPI because that's what I've been tasked to do. So instead of just washing your hands of it, we're going to do our best. But that's also an opportunity to say, in the future, when you're looking at setting these kinds of KPIs, I would love to be involved in the decision-making process and in the data, so that we try to make as data-informed targets, KPIs, expectations, whatever you call it in the business. We're going to try to make those as data informed as possible. And I would love to be included in that process the next time around, please. So it's an opportunity to stretch our capabilities. It's an opportunity to say, yes, I'm going to do everything in my power to help you hit this KPI that I've been given. But in the future, I'd love to be a part of that process. So I think we can turn something that oftentimes feels like a real negative into a serious positive.
Yeah. And that seeing this as an opportunity to open that dialogue, I think, is the biggest thing already that I've learned from this. Instead of just being overwhelmed with this unrealistic task, it's my mindset already has been flipped to opportunity and positive, and how can we learn from this already? So that was good. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Nice. And then we talked a little bit about smaller businesses that may have limited resources internally and what that looks like, particularly from a organic content perspective, what it may look like from a TikTok perspective or Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn or any of the social channels. Because realistically, apart from capture demand channels like Google ads and Facebook ads and Instagram ads, which are those are demand capture market. So I consider those sales channels, not marketing channels when we're talking about paid, unless we're talking about paid distribution of content, which is not sales content, which is designed to ensure that your content gets in front of the right target cohort or audience. So yes, paid and performance marketing can be used as a distribution channel for really good, solid, quote unquote, organic or native content, but in most instances, 95% of the time, it's used as a conversion-based, demand capture-based performance channel. And so what we were talking about is, okay, that's all fine and good. And most brands will rely on customer acquisition through those demand capture channels. That's just the way the world works. But it's also becoming more expensive. CAC is going through the roof. So how can we as a small team start to leverage some of these more organic channels that still have decent organic reach, of which Instagram isn't one of them? However, YouTube Shorts is now being vigged hard. There's something like 2 billion minutes a day or something ridiculous like that is being watched of YouTube Shorts. TikTok still has amazing organic content, as does LinkedIn. So we talked about how can we as a small business with relatively small resources leverage those organic channels that still have great organic reach, despite the fact that we may not have this high production capability within our business. And what my suggestion to you was, hey, start out on TikTok, because TikTok is a really low barrier to entry. You can do all the video editing. You can shoot the videos on your phone. You can do all the video editing. You can do the fast cuts. You can do the stickers, music. You can do the whole thing directly in TikTok. And then once you upload it to TikTok, you can download that video back from TikTok, and then you can repurpose that exact same video to Instagram. You can repurpose that exact same video to YouTube Shorts. You can repurpose that video even to LinkedIn. Some of my best video content on LinkedIn in terms of performance is my downloaded TikTok videos uploaded to LinkedIn with a long text post to go with it, with a lot more context and a lot more explanation and a lot more value added via the text in the post. But the video in the stream is what catches people's eye, and they stop as a result of it. So we did discuss some of those organic channels that don't require super high production value to have super high impact.
I think the main takeaway I got from that was just testing the same content on different platforms and just seeing what sticks, because I didn't think that TikTok content would perform well on LinkedIn, but here we go.
Yeah. So it's good. Any other parting words before you have to get back to the grind and get back to it?
I think just the most important question probably is it beer or is it a whiskey this afternoon? What do we?
It's a bourbon for me.
The bourbon. There we go. You're a bourbon. Yeah, I forgot you're a bourbon man.
If you'd like to register for free for the Mentor Sessions with Jason Greenwood, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason. See you there.